The stars flickered in the distance as Captain Ava Roberts steered her ship through the vast expanse of space. Her mission was simple: explore the unknown regions of the galaxy, gather data, make contact with alien species where possible, and learn about the vastness that lay beyond humanity's reach. But as her ship glided through the unknown, she felt the strange chill of uncertainty crawl down her spine, a sensation that had become all too familiar in these uncharted territories. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Kira, glanced up from the console, the screen showing the strange blip on the radar. Her eyes narrowed with curiosity. "Captain, there is something ahead, a large vessel. It's not on any of our charts, and it's not responding to our hails." The silence on the bridge was thick. As Ava processed the information, it was likely an alien ship, perhaps a scout ship from a nearby civilization. They'd encountered a few species on their travels, none hostile, but none particularly welcoming either. Ava frowned and leaned forward, tapping a few commands into her own console, pushing her ship to the edge of its capabilities, trying to get a better sense of what was ahead. No response, not even a sign of acknowledgement from the ship. She saw Kira's nervous glance, but kept her calm demeanor, knowing that her crew was depending on her. They were explorers after all. It was their job to make contact and learn whatever they could, but something in the air felt off today. Something was different. The massive ship loomed larger with every passing second, its dark silhouette stark against the backdrop of distant stars. It was unlike anything she had seen before, smooth angular edges that seemed to defy the physics she had studied in her academy days. This was no ordinary spacecraft, and with every increase in its size, the tension on the bridge grew palpable. Ava could feel her heartbeat echoing in her chest, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up as though the ship itself was alive, watching, waiting. A soft hum echoed from the control panel, signaling the arrival of a new message. Ava froze. She had not expected contact, not after the silence of the previous moments, but as she opened the message, her breath caught in her throat. A single line of text appeared on the screen in alien script. The translation came quickly from the ship's AI system, but the words were simple and clear: "You do not belong here, leave immediately." Ava hesitated for a brief moment, the impulse to obey warring with the explorer inside her, curiosity and defiance pushing her forward. "We are humans from Earth," she typed into the console. "We come in peace. Our mission is peaceful and exploratory. We do not intend harm, and we ask for safe passage through your space." The reply was immediate, and this time much harsher. "It is an insult for you to trespass here. Your existence is a mistake. You are not worthy of our time or attention, and yet you continue to provoke us. Leave now or face consequences." Her mind raced, her heart pounded. The response was so blunt, so dismissive, as if her people were nothing more than pests. And yet she couldn't back down. She had a duty, she had a responsibility to her crew and to her species. She looked at Kira, who nodded back at her, determination clear in her eyes. Ava took a deep breath and spoke to her ship's AI. "Set us on a course to leave the area, slow and steady, no aggressive maneuvers. We are leaving peacefully." But as she turned to watch the distant ship, the lights on its hull flickered suddenly, and without warning a blinding light erupted from the Zorvian vessel, shooting directly toward her ship. The impact was instant. The force of the blast should have obliterated her ship in an instant, and yet as the beam collided with her vessel, something strange happened. It hit her shields, but instead of collapsing them as expected, the energy dispersed harmlessly around her ship like water flowing around a rock. Ava felt a strange hum resonate through the ship. Her hands instinctively gripped the console, her mind flooded with confusion. What had just happened? Ava stared at the screen in disbelief. The Zorvian weapon had hit with full force, but her ship remained intact. The shields hadn't flared up or faltered. They had absorbed the blast, and now the energy was just gone, like it had never existed at all. Lieutenant Kira's voice broke the silence. "Captain, did you feel that something is wrong? We should move quickly before they fire again." But Ava couldn't tear her eyes from the screen, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The ship's sensors were going haywire, fluctuating wildly in every direction. The ship was responding to something deep within its core, something Ava couldn't explain. The AI system seemed confused, as well running multiple diagnostics in quick succession, but offering no answers. None of this made sense. She was flying an ordinary human exploration vessel. Nothing special, no unknown tech, no advanced alien gadgets. But then why had her ship survived what should have been a deadly blow? Ava's hand hovered over the controls as she hesitated. She couldn't risk engaging in a fight, but at the same time she couldn't just flee, not without understanding what had happened. She opened a comm channel to the Zorvian warship, her voice steady but strained. "This is Captain Ava Roberts of the Human Exploration Fleet. We come in peace. We were not attempting to provoke you in any way. We seek only safe passage. We ask that you cease hostilities and allow us to leave your space." The response was not what she expected. The voice on the other end was low and cold, a harsh alien accent, dripping with disdain. "You are insolent. Humans do not deserve to speak to us. You have no place here, and yet you resist. Do not think for a moment that you are special. Your existence is irrelevant. But we will grant you mercy for now. Leave or be destroyed." Ava clenched her fists, her mind racing. This was no longer a simple misunderstanding. They were being treated as pests, something far worse than just an obstacle. These aliens saw humanity as insignificant, weak, and undeserving of space in the galaxy. Her instincts screamed to fight back, but she knew she was no match for a fleet of alien warships. She had to stay calm and find a way out of this. But there was something else, a strange pull deep within her, a hum vibrating in the air, as though her ship was awakening to something unknown. The ship's console flickered, and a new message appeared on the screen this time. It wasn't from the Zorvians. It was a message from her own ship's AI system. "Captain Roberts, I am detecting unusual energy signatures emanating from the core of your ship. These energies are unlike anything I have ever encountered. They seem to be resonating with your commands. It is as if your thoughts are being transferred directly into the ship's systems." Ava's heart skipped a beat. Was this possible? Could her own mind be influencing the ship somehow? But before she could ask any further questions, another blast struck the ship, this time much more intense than before. But once again, instead of crashing through the shields, the blast dispersed harmlessly around her ship, as if the universe itself was bending to her. Well, she could feel it now, the power surging inside her, a connection to something vast and ancient. She didn't understand it, but it was real. She opened her mouth to speak, but before any words left her lips, her ship responded without her command, surging forward at impossible speeds. The Zorvian warship was left behind in a trail of stardust and chaos. She had no control over what happened next. She could only watch as the impossible unfolded before her eyes. The ship hurtled through space at a speed no human craft should have been able to reach. Ava's grip tightened on the console as the stars around her blurred into streaks of light. The Zorvian warship was far behind now, but she didn't feel safe. Her heart raced, not from the fear of being chased, but from the overwhelming power she felt surging through her body. It was as if she had tapped into something far beyond her understanding, something ancient and alive. The ship was no longer just a machine, it was alive in a way that defied explanation. Lieutenant Kira's voice cracked through the tension. "Captain, what just happened? How did we move so fast? What is going on?" Ava swallowed hard. She didn't know how to explain what was happening, or what she was feeling. The ship's AI responded almost immediately. "Captain Roberts, the ship's systems are integrating with your neural signals. The energy signatures detected earlier are affecting your cognitive processes. It appears that your thoughts are being synchronized with the ship's functions, but the source of this power remains unclear." Ava's mind spun. She could feel the connection now deep inside her, a hum that seemed to echo from the ship's core. The artifact she had seen earlier, that mysterious object embedded in the hull of the ship, was the source of it all. But what was it? Why was it responding to her so violently? She wasn't trained for this kind of thing. She wasn't prepared to wield this kind of power, and yet she couldn't deny its existence. Something had changed inside her, something fundamental, and the ship was only the beginning. Suddenly, the communication console lit up. Another transmission this time. It was a burst of static followed by a clear but frantic voice. "Captain Roberts, this is Commander Sarin of the Galactic Council. You are in violation of several galactic codes of conduct. Your vessel has displayed capabilities far beyond anything seen in this sector. You must explain your actions immediately." Ava didn't even have to think. She knew that the galaxy's governing body, the Galactic Council, had been watching her every move. The Zorvian attack had undoubtedly triggered a wider alert, and now all eyes were on her ship. What did they want from her, and more importantly, what were they going to do now? The voice on the comm continued. "Captain Roberts, you have drawn the attention of several factions, including the Xylorn Dominion and the Arduan Collective. You are now a target of interest. Please stand by for further instructions." Ava slammed her fist onto the console. She didn't have time for this, not now. The Council's message didn't scare her as much as it should have. She had something far more important to focus on. The ship was still vibrating with untapped power. She could feel it inside her. It was waiting for something she wasn't quite ready to give. She didn't know if she could control it, if she could even trust it. But she knew one thing for sure: if she was going to survive this, she had to figure out how to harness it before anyone else could. The ship's eye spoke again. "Captain Roberts, I am detecting new energy readings from nearby star systems. Several factions are en route to your location. You must decide what to do now." Ava's thoughts raced. She had to make a choice: quickly stay and face the incoming fleets, or run and risk drawing more attention. But before she could make up her mind, the ship surged forward once again, seemingly guided by forces beyond her control. She wasn't in command anymore. The ship was, and the universe was about to take notice. The ship blazed through the galaxy with a speed no human vessel could achieve. Ava felt like a passenger in her own body, her hands gripping the console, but having no real control over what was happening. Her heart pounded as the stars stretched into endless streaks of light. Everything around her seemed to bend and shift in a way that defied all logic. The ship was not just a machine anymore. It was something far more powerful, something that seemed to be alive. Lieutenant Kira stood beside her, frozen with fear and awe, watching the ship's sudden surge toward the unknown. They were being pulled toward something beyond anything they could have ever imagined. Ava's thoughts raced, trying to grasp at some semblance of control over the situation, but the ship's energy responded to her emotions and thoughts, and she couldn't stop the wave of fear and confusion that washed over her. The ship vibrated again, as though it too was responding to her unease. The console blinked, and a new message appeared, this time not from the Galactic Council or the Zorvian Empire, but from her own ship's AI. "Captain Roberts, I am detecting an anomaly ahead, an object of unknown origin. Its energy signatures are far beyond anything recorded in our databases. It is calling to you." Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. The artifact, the one embedded in her ship, was reacting again. It pulsed with a low hum, almost like a heartbeat. It was guiding her, pulling her forward. But where was it taking them? What was she supposed to do now? She had no idea what was ahead of her, but she couldn't stop this. She didn't even know if she could control it anymore. The ship's systems were becoming more unpredictable by the second. Her mind felt like it was being stretched thin, unable to process the sheer amount of energy that flowed through her veins. She could feel it deep within her. Her thoughts and the ship's systems were one and the same now, as if they had become part of each other. Kira looked at Ava, her voice barely a whisper. "Captain, what do? We can't just let the ship take us wherever it wants. We need to find a way to stop it." Ava could feel the fear in her voice, but she didn't have an answer. She couldn't give her an answer because she didn't know what to do. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was something more, something connected to her in a way that was beyond comprehension. Suddenly, the anomaly appeared on their screens. It was a massive structure unlike anything Ava had ever seen. It seemed to stretch out into the void itself, made of jagged lines of light and dark matter, its shape constantly shifting. As though it were in a state of flux, it pulsed with the same energy that Ava now felt deep inside her, like a beacon calling to her. Something ancient, something powerful was waiting there. The ship moved faster still, as though it had a mind of its own, pushing forward toward the structure. Ava couldn't stop it. Even if she wanted to, she could feel it inside her, the pull of the artifact urging her toward whatever lay beyond the structure, the unknown force that had awakened inside her was growing stronger, and she could feel it spreading throughout the entire ship. Kira stared at the growing structure ahead, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "Captain, are we going to make it? What is that thing?" Ava didn't answer her mind too focused on the swirling chaos ahead. She could hear the artifact's pulse growing louder inside her. With each passing second, she could feel herself slipping further away from control. The ship was no longer just a tool for exploration. It was a vessel of something else, something that had been dormant until now. And it was taking her somewhere she couldn't yet understand. The ship moved ever closer to the swirling structure ahead. Ava could feel the tension in her chest, building, the energy inside her growing louder. The artifact, deep within the ship, seemed to be pulling her to it like a magnet, drawing her closer with an invisible force she couldn't fight against. Kira stood frozen next to her, eyes wide with both fear and fascination. "Captain, what is that thing? It looks alive, but not like anything we've ever seen before." Ava tried to focus her thoughts, but the connection to the ship was becoming overwhelming. She could feel its thoughts now, as though it were speaking to her directly, not in words, but in emotions and images flickering through her mind. The ship was a living thing, she realized, not just an advanced machine, but a part of something far older, far greater than anything humanity could comprehend. The artifact embedded in her ship was part of a larger network, part of a forgotten civilization that had left its mark on the galaxy long ago. Ava's heart raced as the truth began to settle in. The ship was calling her to this structure for a reason, but what was that reason? Ava tried to push the overwhelming sensation away, but it clung to her thoughts like a vice. The hum inside the ship grew louder, the energy flooding through every circuit, every fiber of her being. She felt connected to the stars themselves, like she could reach out and touch the very fabric of the universe. But at the same time, the danger of it all was closing in. The closer they got to the structure, the more hostile the energy around them became. She could feel the tension of unseen forces watching them, waiting. Lieutenant Kira's voice broke through the chaos. "Captain, we have incoming ships. They are closing in fast. I don't think they're here to greet us." Ava's eyes snapped to the scanner, and sure enough, there were multiple blips on the radar, growing closer with each passing second. They weren't friendly ships. The readings confirmed that these were warships, and they were coming straight for them. Ava's mind spun. She had no time to react, no time to formulate a plan. The ship was still moving uncontrollably toward the structure. The incoming ships were almost upon them, and she could feel the pressure mounting on all sides. The Zorvians, the Galactic Council, whoever these ships were, they didn't want her anywhere near the structure. But why? Why was this so important? Why did the universe seem to be closing in on her? The first blast came without warning. A beam of intense energy struck the ship's shields, but instead of buckling like it should have, the ship absorbed the blast. As if it were nothing, the shockwave reverberated through the hull, but Ava felt no pain, only the rush of the energy moving through her. Her eyes widened as the ship responded again. This time, the blast wasn't absorbed, it was redirected back toward the incoming warships. With impossible accuracy, the energy surged forward and hit the attacking fleet's lead ship dead on. The explosion was deafening, a burst of light that temporarily blinded everyone on the bridge. The shockwave shook the ship, but Ava didn't feel the fear she expected. Instead, there was a strange calm inside her, like she had just unlocked something ancient and powerful inside her own mind. The ship had reacted to her thoughts again. It had defended them without her command, but this time, it wasn't just a defense, it was an attack. She looked at Kira, whose expression mirrored her own shock and confusion. The enemy ships were retreating now, damaged and disoriented. But Ava knew this wasn't over. She had just activated something far more dangerous than she had ever anticipated. The ship wasn't just a tool anymore. It was a weapon, a force of nature that had been waiting to be unleashed. And now that it had been, the galaxy would never be the same again. Kira's voice was shaky. "Captain, what just happened? Did we do that?" Ava could only stare at the screen in awe. She had no idea how to answer because she didn't understand what had just occurred either. The ship had responded to her emotions, her thoughts, with a power that neither of them could comprehend. But there was no time to question it. They weren't safe yet. They had just become a target on an unimaginable scale, and the true consequences of their actions were still unfolding. The ship's sensors blared alarms as the remaining enemy vessels regrouped. The warships that had retreated were now circling at a distance, as though evaluating their next move. Ava could feel the tension in the air, the hum of the ship's systems now almost deafening, as if the very vessel itself was waiting for something beyond the conflict with the Zorvian fleet. She could feel the weight of their presence surrounding them like an invisible net closing and ready to snap at any moment. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Kira's voice cut through the silence again. "Captain, we can't outrun them. We don't have the firepower to fight back. If we don't come up with something fast, we're going to be surrounded." Ava's mind was racing. She had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was clear: they couldn't stay in this position much longer. Whatever had awakened within the ship was powerful, but it wasn't enough to guarantee their survival. She needed to think fast, but the pressure of the moment was overwhelming. The artifact, the strange object embedded in the ship, hummed once again, sending a shiver down her spine. Ava didn't know what it was or where it had come from, but it was clear now that it was at the center of everything. It was connected to the ship's sudden abilities to manipulate energy, to redirect attacks with impossible precision, to respond to her thoughts like an extension of her very soul. It was calling her, and Ava had no choice but to answer. But how? Suddenly, the ship's AI chimed in again. "Captain Roberts, we are receiving a transmission from the Zorgian flagship. It is a direct hail." The voice on the other end was cold and detached, without emotion. "You are a threat to the stability of this sector. You have awakened something that should have remained dormant. The artifact you possess is not for your kind. You will return it to us immediately, or face the full might of the Zorgian Empire." Ava's pulse quickened. The Zorgians knew what they were dealing with now. They knew about the artifact, and they wanted it back. But what were they willing to do to get it back? She didn't know what the artifact was capable of, but she knew that she couldn't let the Zorvians take it. She couldn't let them control whatever power it held. If she did, they would unleash it on the galaxy in ways no one could predict. Kira was looking at her, waiting for a response. "Captain, what should we do? We can't just hand it over." Ava felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her like a vice. She didn't have the luxury of thinking things through. Not now. The Zorgians would never stop hunting them. If they got away with the artifact, they would hunt her and her crew down until every trace of humanity was erased from the galaxy. There was only one choice left. They had to keep moving. "Set course for the structure," she said, her voice firm. "Despite the chaos, we're not giving them the artifact. And we're not running. We're going to find out what it is and why it chose us." Kira's eyes widened, but she nodded her understanding. Ava could feel the pull of the artifact growing stronger with every passing second. It was calling her, it was guiding her, but she had no idea where it would lead them or what they would find when they got there. All she knew was that they had no choice but to follow its call. The ship surged forward once again, its engines roaring to life. But this time, Ava wasn't just a passenger anymore. She had made her decision. They weren't running, and they weren't hiding. They were going to find the truth about the artifact and the power it had unleashed, and no one in the galaxy was going to stop them. But little did she know, there were others watching from the shadows, others who had been waiting for this moment for centuries, and they would do anything to ensure that the artifact never fell into the wrong hands. The ship's engines hummed louder as they approached the massive structure. It loomed ahead like a twisted monument, built from dark matter and jagged light. Its edges seemed to pulse and warp, as if the very fabric of space was being bent by its presence. Ava could feel the pull of the artifact deep inside her, the connection between her and the ship growing stronger with every passing second. The closer they got to the structure, the more alive everything seemed to become. The ship, the artifact, and even the air around them felt charged with an ancient power she couldn't explain. Lieutenant Kira stood at her side, her voice a whisper. "Captain, whatever we're about to face, I don't think we can go back after this." Ava didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the dark monument ahead, every part of her being focused on the strange force that called to her. She didn't know why, but she knew they had no choice. They had to reach the heart of whatever lay within that structure. They had to understand what it was and why it had chosen them. As they entered the structure's gravitational field, the ship's systems suddenly began to overload. Warnings flashed across every screen, and the ship shook violently like it was being torn apart from the inside out. Ava gripped the console, her knuckles white, as she tried to steady herself. What was happening? The ship had never experienced anything like this. Before the eye was almost frantic. Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Something is interfering with the ship's core systems. We can't maintain this speed much longer. If we don't stabilize the ship now, we'll be torn apart. Ava's heart skipped a beat. They were too close to stop now. The structure loomed before them, a black void that seemed to swallow the light from the stars around it. She could see the pulsing energy rising from its depths. The artifact inside her responded to it like a beacon, and she knew she couldn't resist it anymore. The ship was moving on its own. She could feel the ship's will pushing her forward, her hands shaking, as she tried to make sense of what was happening. "We need to break through," she whispered to herself. "We need to break through, or we'll never make it back." Suddenly, the ship lurched forward with an impossible speed. The surrounding space seemed to bend and twist around them. As they passed into the structure's core, the walls seemed to stretch and shift, as if they were part of some ancient mechanism that was just now beginning to wake up. Ava barely had time to process what was happening when the lights inside the ship flickered and went dark. The entire ship was plunged into complete blackness. The hum of the artifact inside her grew louder than ever before, its pulse vibrating through her entire being, as if it were reaching out to her. Ava felt like she was being pulled into something much bigger than herself. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was part of a living entity, part of something that had been hidden away for millennia, something the galaxy had forgotten. Then a voice echoed through the ship, a voice that wasn't her own. It was ancient and deep, and it resonated within her very soul. "The time has come to awaken the chosen ones," the voice boomed. "The artifact is a key, and you are the ones who will unlock its power. You are the first humans to awaken to your destiny." Ava's breath caught in her throat. The voice was speaking to her, and to her alone. But what was it saying? What was her destiny? And why had the artifact chosen her? Before she could ask another question, the ship's systems came back online. The lights flickered back to life, and the view outside the ship shifted. They had reached the center of the structure, and before them stood a vast expanse of strange alien technology that pulsed with the same energy as the artifact itself. Ava knew then that there was no going back, no escaping whatever fate had just chosen for her. The ship hovered in the heart of the massive structure. The walls around them were a shimmering dark metal covered in strange rooms that glowed faintly with an eerie light. Ava could feel the energy surging through the ship, as if it were alive, resonating with the artifact buried deep within her mind and body. The ship had brought them here, but she had no idea what awaited them in the heart of this alien relic. The air was thick with anticipation. Every fiber of her being was focused on the unknown force that now had a grip on her soul. Kira stepped up beside her, her voice trembling. "Captain, what is this place? What are we supposed to do?" Ava didn't answer her, not at first. Her eyes were fixed on the central platform ahead, a raised dais surrounded by strange shifting lights. The rooms on the walls seemed to pulse in time with the hum that was coming from deep within the structure. It was calling to her. She could feel it, a power that defied everything she had known. The artifact was guiding her forward, pushing her toward the dais. The ship AI spoke again. "Captain, we are detecting a massive energy buildup at the center of the structure. It is unlike anything we've encountered before. It seems to be drawing from your own neural energy. I am unable to stabilize the fluctuations. If you do not take action, we will be consumed." Ava felt the words reverberate through her skull. She knew what was happening. The artifact had tapped into her thoughts, her emotions, and now it was trying to merge her with the power at the heart of the structure. But why? Why had it chosen her? Why now? The hum of the artifact grew louder, and Ava felt her body responding to it. Her hands gripped the console so tightly that her knuckles ached. Her heart raced faster as she felt the ship's systems resonate with her own thoughts. The walls around her seemed to shift and warp, her vision blurred as the lights around her seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She wasn't sure if it was the ship or if it was her, but it felt as though the very structure was becoming part of her. Kira was speaking again, but her words were distant. "Captain, we need to leave. We can't stay here any longer." Ava turned to her and saw the terror in her eyes, but it wasn't just fear for their lives. It was the fear of something bigger, something more profound. Ava knew that Kira was sensing it too. The ship was changing. The artifact was changing them both. Without thinking, she moved toward the daze, the ship responding to her every motion, as though it were part of her body. The closer she got, the more she could feel the power of the artifact calling to her, like a voice inside her mind. It whispered to her a promise of unimaginable knowledge, of strength, and of destiny. She could feel herself being drawn into its grasp, but something in her held back the tiny thread of human will that still clung to her. Ava stepped onto the dais, and immediately the structure around her began to react. The runes flared to life, and the energy in the air became unbearable. Ava felt herself being pulled into the center of it, her body vibrating with the energy of the artifact. She could feel her mind expanding, her vision widening, as if she were seeing the entire galaxy laid out before her. And then she understood the truth. The artifact was a relic of an ancient race that had transcended time and space. It had been hidden away to protect the galaxy from its power, but it had also chosen her because she was something different, something new, the first human to awaken to this power, to harness the force of the universe itself. And in that moment, Ava realized the galaxy had been waiting for her to awaken, for her to unlock the true potential of humanity's place in the stars. The power surged through her body as the artifact merged with her. She was no longer just a human captain. She was something more, something greater, and the galaxy would never be the same again.